God blesses us with children, if we are blessed with children, that they're like a quiver of arrows that we, fire off into the world. But it made me think about the arrows. Like back then, like arrows were like, carefully picked piece of wood, shaped perfectly, and really a ton of thought and effort were put into it before they were used. Our children are those arrows, and we as parents are shaping them and handcrafting them and helping them be prepared for that flight out into the world.
Aloha everyone, welcome to All Things Possible. Today we have a very helpful conversation from Kari Kampakis. I loved her honesty and just the way she views parenting, the mistakes she's made along the way and how she recovered. She's almost an empty nester, so she had a ton of words of wisdom. So enjoy this conversation with Kari and let's dive on in. Welcome, Kari. I'm so glad to have you. And I wanted to just kind of go into this with what's your greatest joy in the current season that you're in your motherhood and where you're at, and maybe share with our listeners where you're at in motherhood currently.
Okay. Yes, I'm in a much different place than I was even 5 years ago. My oldest daughter's 22, about to graduate from college this May. My second daughter's also in college. She's a sophomore. My third daughter is a high school senior, about to go to college. And then my fourth daughter's a ninth grader. So I feel like I have a lot more free time. I get to enjoy my daughters on a different level, especially the ones that are off and in college. And you're just seeing more of that friendship form. And, I'm really moving into more of that coach and counselor mode. Not to say that I'm not still their mom, because I still play that role, but it's just seeing your children. I feel like, seeing the fruit of all that hard work you did when they were little. And not every day, of course, they still make mistakes and I still get frustrated as a mom, but it's a lot easier than I feel like where I was 5 or 10 years ago when I was just in the thick of raising teenagers.
What was harder, raising teenagers or little toddlers?
Honestly, I tell people all the time, my hardest year of motherhood was having 3 kids under the age of 4. And I think moms of littles don't hear that enough, because that was even harder than having the 4th child. That was just, and you have 3 kids, you're buckling in car seats and they're fighting and you're teaching, you're trying to teach some lessons and you're not always seeing the fruit of what you're doing. It's hard, and it's hard to stay inspired during that season.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I call the 2 to 4 years old the barbaric years. They're kind of barbaric and they're hard to predict, and you do your best to lead, guide, protect, encourage, but sometimes the barbaric comes out regardless of how good you are as a parent. And so anytime I see a mom in the grocery store with the tantrum child, I never judge them, because you just never know what's, that it's just hard and it can happen to all of us at some point or another.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Well, what do you think, looking back on those young years, because I know we'll get into the older years, but what was something that kind of helped you during that season, or was it kind of just survival mode?
Yeah, looking back, I think it's just probably one thing I'm very glad I did. I did a lot. We have 4 kids like y'all do. I did a lot of conflict resolution, not to say I got involved in every fight that they had, but we had a lot of conversations, and I'm now seeing how that plays a role in the friendships that they have in college and how they resolve conflict with friends, because I think a lot of people are never taught those skills or how to have those hard conversations. But, one thing that I really had to teach mine was they're all such different personalities, and they don't fight much now, but they fought constantly when they were little. And so there were 2. Yeah. And now I have one that she's tough. She's tough. She does not get her feelings hurt easily, but she was the one who would just say something very bluntly. She would be just very rude. And I realized some people are just not born with as much of a social filter as other kids, you know? And then my child, who was real sensitive, she just kind of knew what to say and what not to say, but she would get her feelings hurt so easily by this sister. So I would always tell them, you know, God put y'all together, that you're going to meet people in life. And I would tell the older one, you know, this might not hurt your feelings because you're tough, but this is, you know, the way you said it, it's going to really hurt somebody else's feelings. And so, you know, so she has really taken that to heart, and it's really helped her as she's gotten older. And then the younger sister, she would get, you know, she would cry over everything. And so I would tell her, I was like, I love your tender heart. She's so empathetic and compassionate, but, you know, teaching her to like let it roll off your shoulders and to keep that tender heart, but have a thick skin. And I think it really just goes back to knowing each child's personality and thinking about, you know, what are you preparing them for down the road? And, you know, obviously to have that relationship with God and to be a light and to be a force for good in this world. And that really begins by the relationships that they have with other people. And I just think there's nothing more important that we're doing as parents is teaching them how to build healthy relationships, not only with God, that's their first most important relationship, but also with other girls, with other boys, you know, with everyone.
I love that. In this season that we're currently in, you know, we've chosen to go down the homeschooling route. And I think a lot about the education that I want to encourage and instill and bring to our children is a lot more around, you know, relationships and faith and other skills that they really need to make it through life. And I often am thinking about the whole relationship because of all the conflict that's going on in these years currently. And yes. I don't know, lately it feels like really hard with our 4 and 7-year-old. Their personalities just do not get along well. And I almost want you to dive in a little more. Like, what do you do as far as conflict resolution in the young years? Because this feels like a pain point to me. And sometimes I feel like I'm overstepping and like trying to mitigate every little challenge, and then lately I'm like, maybe I should back off a little and just let's see what happens.
And it's like hard to balance because you want to see them get along, and then sometimes we're just getting too frustrated, and maybe that frustration like rubs off onto them and they sense our frustration, and we don't want to be like doing that. We want to like, we care for you, we love you, and we're trying to help you respect one another and love one another as God calls us to. But yeah, it's always like and then if you're like stressed out and fatigued and you're not communicating the right way.
Right. That's why I think so. I think grandparents and having that support system are so important. And like now I'm thinking about the next season of life, like, Lord, keep me healthy enough that I can help my children with that, because sometimes we don't have the time, you know, we don't have the patience, and you've got 4 kids you're juggling. And I'm like, don't ever let me forget how hard it was when I was a young parent, and you're already stretched so thin. But
and you get to be that blessing to them in the future.
Yes. We're super blessed. Like, my parents live on the same property as us, so we do have a lot of help. And I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be. Like, this is supposed to be close to your family, and like, God willing, your family is supportive. And you know, I trust my children with my parents. So. And Adam's parents as well. They spend a lot of time with us, so we have that amazing support system. But
so crucial.
Still, so let's go into that a little. Like, what's some tips on mitigating the chaos and the friction between the siblings?
You know, a couple of things that I've learned. Like, we had, and I got this from a 2nd grade teacher. We went to watch, like, Observe in a Classroom, but she did this exercise one day, think it or say it. And she used these books that they had at school. Like, one was called My Mouth is a Volcano, and it was about this kid who just blurted out every thought that came to mind. And somebody in the book basically taught him the subtle art of being tactful. And so I just think that a lot of kids are not learning those social graces that, you know, think it or say it. Just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it. And I've had to learn this even as a mom, that, you know, just because I think it doesn't mean I should say it. Because I grew up in a big family. We were very direct and we were very straightforward. And what I learned as my daughter became a teenager, you know, the way I was saying things, very direct and straightforward, a lot of times that's what was causing tension. So, for example, like in Love Her Well, and it is the story that every time a mom reads that book, it is the one story they all talk about how much it helped them. But, you know, my daughter, when she was 13, 14, was struggling with acne. And obviously it was a pain point for her. We were trying all these different creams. We'd been going to the dermatologist for months. Nothing was really working. And so we were in the car one day having the best conversation and singing, just having this mother-daughter time. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, she'll remember this 30 years from now. We're making a core memory. And I look over at her, and the thing that jumps out is that her acne is flared up. And I start to ask her, are you taking your acne medication? Because that's the mom in me, the blurting out the first thought that came to mind. And I stopped because I remembered asking her that a few months earlier, and I remembered how her face just fell as soon as I asked that. And she said, yes, I know my face looks terrible. I'm taking it. So I knew my daughter's responsible. I knew she was taking it. I was like, that is not the time to ask that question. And maybe that wasn't the way to ask that question. Maybe there was a more subtle way to do it. And so what I realized, I was like, I was going to ruin that moment I was having with her. You know, that wouldn't be what she remembered us singing to the radio. She would remember how I made her feel on that day, asking her a question to remind her that her face was breaking out. So I just think just teaching our kids that, like I said, think it or say it. You know, just because you think this about somebody doesn't mean you should blurt it out. And just having that social filter. And it's something, it was very surprising. I took my 4-year-old to that class exercise when they did that day, and she was cracking up. She totally got it at 4 years old. And so I think that's a good exercise we can do with our kids, and also helping them understand their personalities. Because, you know, my one, you know, the one that didn't have the filter as naturally as some of her sisters, you know, she's just she's a force of nature. And most families have at least one child who's like that. And the mistake I made was I would always get so frustrated with her. I would just like get mad at her, punish her right in front of her sisters. And looking back, I wish I'd been more patient with her, like my husband. I wish when she had done that, I look back now, I don't think she realized how hurtful what these things that she said actually were. And I wish I had like pulled her aside and said, okay, you know, you're really tough. This might not hurt your feelings, but this is hurtful to someone else. And yeah, you've got to learn this skill because it's going to hurt you in your friendships and your other relationships. And just tell her, like, I love your strength. I love your strength. I love your strong personality. And it's going to help you move mountains one day. But, you know, this is something we need to work on. And I wish I'd done that more of a loving way rather than a way that I thought she was just intentionally being mean. And now you just look back, especially when they're little, I don't think they sometimes realize, especially when you look at what they're watching on TV or seeing modeled for them, there aren't a lot of social graces out there. But I just seen the work that I do. So many of these kids are having trouble in relationships, and they want people to be kind to them and to be thoughtful to them, but they're not reciprocating what they're wanting. And so, you know, as we all know, as adults, you know, the level of your relationships depends on the kind of person you are, and water is going to seek its own level. And so great character is going to attract great character. And I just think siblings and home environments present the perfect petri dish to safely learn these conflict resolution skills and how to get along with different personalities.
As you were talking, it was reminded me of that verse about, you know, God blesses us with children, you know, if we are blessed with children, that they're like a quiver of arrows that we, you know, fire off into the world. But it made me think about the arrows. Like back then, like we can take for granted, I archery hunt a little bit. You can just take for granted, you just buy an arrow from the store. But back then, like arrows were like, you know, carefully picked piece of wood, shaped perfectly, and really a ton of thought and effort were put into it before they were used.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, our children are those arrows, and we as parents are shaping them and handcrafting them and helping them be prepared for that flight out into the world. And now it's like, that's got to be a little scary. Your children are like graduating from college, and you're in a different phase of life. I'm sure it's like, it sounds like you put a lot of effort into shaping your children, and it's just a good encouragement for us to, you know, when these little ones are tougher, to like take the time to teach those skills. It was think it, say it.
Yes, think it or say it.
Think it or say it. So sometimes you gotta choose when
so if you're about
say it or think it only.
That's a cool thing to remember and help our children.
You seem very self-reflective. Did you have other older moms in your life that helped you? Because fast forward now, you're an author of almost 6 books now, and so, you know, what helped you along the way and to get thoughtful in these little tips, even from the young years?
Yeah. Oh, that is a great question. There were so many things. I do feel like there's more resources for young moms now. I mean, you and Adam, y'all are light years ahead of where my friends and I were at your age and with little kids. Like, intentional parenting was maybe a little bit of a thing. It just wasn't as much of a thing then. And so I do look back and I wish I'd had all of this then. But a lot of my lessons, one, were learned the hard way, things that I did differently with my fourth child versus my first child. And that's what I want anyone watching this to take away, is that there's so much grace, and it just makes you realize how much you need God, because we get so many things wrong, but he can fill in those gaps. And sometimes we just do the best we can and have to leave the rest to him. But that, I also think, just going to church, and that is something else I'm so thankful that my husband and I always stayed true to, because I mean, getting 4 little girls ready for church, there were so many days that I was just ready to quit, and I'm like exhausted by the time we get in the car, and I'm like, saying, thinking these curse words in my head, I'm getting them ready for church, and I'm like, this is so messed up. But yeah, the thought.
I think we can relate a little bit.
I'm like acting like a demon, and here I am. Let's go to church. But what I kept remembering, I remembered my mom. We had 5 kids in our family, and I remember my mom telling me one time, we were always at church. Now, we might have been in the cry room, but I got you there. And that was always my goal. Like, we might end up in the cry room, we might end up in the back, we might not be in the sanctuary, but I'm going to get them there. And I'm so thankful, because like now my kids, I can take them to church, and they stop fighting you at some point when they know that that's just part of the deal. Mm-hmm. And even with what I do, I really feel like my faith, I mean, I was one of those lifelong Christians, but it really wasn't until I hit my 40s that my faith took off. And all those Sundays that I went to church, all those seeds that were planted, I mean, that's really when I started truly like opening my Bible, writing books, really getting into my faith. But it started with 3 big scares, several that involved my children, that truly like brought me to my knees. And one was my daughter, my youngest, has food allergies, and she had a major anaphylactic reaction that started swelling. I mean, I had to give her the EpiPen. It was really one of my scariest moments ever. And what happened was I had these scary moments. We also had a tree fall on our house, and it was a year of just crazy events. And what I realized was, like, the way you feel the next day after you have an event like that, when you're just like, oh, thank you, God, or, what can I do to reciprocate? I remember thinking, why am I not living like this every day? I felt like I was in a different frame of mind than I am in a normal day, because usually it's just praying for what I want, but then something like that happens, and my faith just took on a whole different level. And I remember thinking, I don't want my faith to feel different just because an emergency happened or a crisis happened. Like, I want it to feel the same before or after, that I was already engaging in God, my conversation with God before that. So anyway, that, like I said, it was a slow growth, and I'm still growing. And I feel like now my job is to really encourage these moms behind me, because I've made plenty of mistakes, but I think the younger moms behind me, and even the ones behind y'all, they're facing such bigger challenges in raising kids today. And so I think there's so much pressure on them to get it perfect. And I'm really the last generation of parents that we didn't have social media. My oldest daughter was in 1st grade when I first heard about iPhones. So I really got to get my feet under me as a mom without comparing myself to every mother on the planet and hearing so much conflicting advice like moms do now. But that's why I think the truth is getting more and more important, because you can get 800 different opinions, but you have to keep going back to, okay, what does God say? What has always been true. And even in parenting, what has always been true. Just the same values of raising good kids, that will never change.
Hey everyone, did you know we have a private community to empower families?
We know life is full of challenges, and cultural norms can be leading us everywhere but the right path.
Families are stretched thin, teens are struggling, and staying anchored in faith can be really tough.
That's why we created something transformative, an online community designed to strengthen families, deepen relationships, question cultural lies, and encourage you to grow together in your faith.
Live shows with Adam and I, expert interviews, Bible studies, and fun family challenges, giveaways, and even brand new podcasts that you're listening to. We're here to equip you with the tools to thrive.
Our community will also be the first invited to our in-person epic family surf events that we will create memories that will last forever.
Join us on this journey. When you sign up for an annual membership, you will get free access to our top life courses, and you are automatically entered for a chance to win a trip for free to Kauai.
Awesome. So gather your family and join us for deeper connection and faith-filled fun in your home. Click the link to learn more, and we'll see you inside. You know that Bethany and I are incredibly intentional about how we approach our lives, from the content we consume all the way to the foods we eat.
When we started researching the food industry, it got us fired up to seek responsible, clean, and sustainable food sources.
Did you know that over 85% of the grass-fed beef in stores is imported and is labeled as product of the USA since it's packaged here? The truth is, much of the meat on the grocery store shelves is filled with things you don't want. Antibiotics, hormones, questionable origins, and even harmful seed oils.
That's why we choose GoodRanchers.com, the brand that stands for American quality and integrity.
At Good Ranchers, they do things the right way. All their meat is born, raised, and harvested in the USA.
When you buy from Good Ranchers, you're not just getting better meat, you're standing with American farmers, ranchers, and families who have been feeding this country for generations.
Good Ranchers products are free from hidden additives. There are no antibiotics ever, and no added hormones, and no seed oils. Just one simple ingredient you can read, and that's meat. But the best part, Good Ranchers delivers straight to your door. No more last-minute grocery store runs, long lines, or wondering if you're getting the best quality.
Can we just say, too, their chicken nuggets are incredible. So, just high-quality American meat shipped directly to you. As long as you're located in the lower 48, are you ready to get the quality your family deserves? Right now, you can subscribe to any Good Ranchers box and get $40 off your first order when you use my code Bethany at checkout. That's GoodRanchers.com, and by using my code Bethany, you'll get $40 off your first box of America's best meat. So let's be intentional about our life and be intentional about what we put in our body. Let's go to GoodRanchers.com today. Well, we have a couple of episodes we've been doing on tech in the home, like social media and Instagram and gaming, and I'm super passionate about this topic. Mm-hmm. I'm curious how you navigated that in your home with all your girls and what that has been like.
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and moms will ask me, when did your daughters get Instagram? And again, my generation was different. I'm like, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I think they were maybe 9 or 10. But you have to remember that it wasn't Instagram as we know it. Back then it was a photo filter. Right. And so it was fun. We had 10 followers. We just followed the aunts and the uncles and the cousins, and we used it for photo filters. So our earliest photos were like the dog or their American Girl dolls. And so, it's so different now. And I think my generation was the first generation that we didn't have anybody to guide us in social media. And a lot of mistakes were made. And, we gave them the phones in 6th or 7th grade. And we would do it differently now. And I think that the moms behind us, some listened, some didn't. But I do think there's a really big movement in the moms behind them, especially with that new book, The Anxious Generation. I think that movement is really catching on. And even, my youngest daughter and I are doing a trainer at the gym, and he and his wife just had a baby. And he's talking about how he and a lot of his friends, they're realizing these kids who first had technology as teenagers, they're now becoming parents, and they don't want their kids to have phones. And they're realizing the negative impact of it. So I think we're going to start seeing a pendulum swing of not necessarily, technology is here, but and obviously, I wouldn't be able to do this with you two without technology. Like, I do think so much good can come from it. You and I, both can get messages out beyond our community with technology, but just knowing its place and not ever letting it replace those personal relationships. Because, I think with AI, every expert I talk to that knows something about AI that just says the world is going to look so different in a year and a half. And I just think that these girls and moms, we got to be so rooted in what is real. And you've got to have those face-to-face relationships. Videos can be manufactured, but I'm like, I can say, Bethany said this to my face. Like, I know, this happened in person. Like, we're going to have to go back to the face-to-face interactions versus doing so much online. And I think that's what people are craving.
Well, Kari, you were a part of our mother-daughter program we had going for a few years, and that was such a joy, and I always loved hearing you talk in that program. But the one thing I noticed was a lot of these moms were really needing connection with other moms, like as if they weren't getting it in their own life. And that was often the highlight of what was coming out of the program. And Instagram, you can get lost in there, but it's not true connection. And for our young people, they're on Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram, and there's stats saying they're on there as much as like 7 to 10 hours a day. Like the addiction is real, and it's a major issue. But like you said, I think the pendulum will swing back around once more information is put out there. But there's always the kind of like group of people who just never will maybe care and will just kind of do whatever is easiest. And I just think it's such a challenge to the generations currently going through life and how much it's affecting our young people. What would you encourage moms in finding how to like have more real relationships with people around them? Because I feel like sometimes our relationships are kind of stuck in a more shallow place. So how can we grow in that and like build better connections?
Yes, and I feel like sometimes moms think that I should have a friend group. My son's in 4th grade. I should be friends with all the 4th grade moms. Like, I think sometimes they pigeonhole themselves, like, or I'm not friends with these moms. But really, it's just like being open to friendships. And just as you're living your life, like maybe you go to church and there's somebody you really connect with. Okay, maybe this mom is 10 years older than you or 10 years younger, but being open to that friendship and just knowing that friendship can be made in a lot of different places. I'll visit a lot of small towns, and the moms are like, my daughter's so lonely. There's only 8 girls in the whole grade, and she's not really clicking with any of them. And we're praying for somebody new to move to town. And so I always ask them, like, well, is there a mom and a daughter in the grade above you or the grade below you, or somebody that you know at church that, especially if you're going through a lonely season, sometimes God uses really unexpected people during those seasons, and it might be somebody that's 2 years older than your daughter, and it ends up being a real blessing in that friendship. And so I think the same thing with mom friendships, that, really just being the inviter. My friends and I, we were talking about this earlier this year, is the art of the invitation. And it takes courage to do that, be the one to extend invitations. And that's something I learned to do when I moved to a new city as a newlywed. And, see who reciprocates. And you got to have a thick skin, because not everybody will reciprocate, and not everybody needs a best friend. And that's one thing I learned. I moved to a new city where everybody had moved back there. And I was invited to a lot of parties, but I just didn't have any deep friendships. And I remember coming home one night and just crying to my husband. And I'm like, nobody needs me like I need them. Because I was like, they all took baths together at 2 years old. Like, I can't compete with those old friendships that they have. And so I learned that I could be friendly with them. But it wasn't until another girl moved to town a few months later, and she didn't have any other good friends in town either. And we found each other, and we built one really solid friendship. And I'm like, one true friendship is all you need. And then from there, we started inviting, other friends. Some other friends moved to town, and just inviting them in. And by the time my husband and I moved 4 years later, we had the best group of couple friends. And it was really hodgepodge, just people that we met and we liked, and they needed friendship, and they craved friendship like we did, and shared our values. So I would just encourage moms to be brave. And, just to have, start a Bible study, invite different people, cast a wide net. You'll see who comes the first few times, but who are the ones who consistently come? And it might not be your best friends. It might be, like I said, somebody from church or from the school, but that might be a friendship you're supposed to pursue.
Yeah, and even some of my mom friends, they're doing a book club. So I thought that was really sweet. And it's like a fun way to come together and, have a conversation about something rather than just kind of like talk about the latest, little things that happen, but they're like, it's an intentional conversation. So that's a really fun idea too, I think.
Yes. And is Mahjong a big thing in Hawaii?
Oh, I've never even heard of that. What is it?
Like the one on the computer where you like click the tiles?
Well, they now have games. It is huge. I mean, really? Huge. Everywhere I go, it's getting really big in my community. I first heard about it last year when I was in Winston-Salem, And these moms are telling me, oh, we drop everything at 1:00 every day and get together to play mahjong. But it's everywhere I go. It's a huge. Women are playing it together. I guess it's the new form of bridge for our generation.
Oh, interesting.
But it's very interesting. And I have a friend in South Alabama that teaches classes, and she told me, she's like, you would not believe the number of cards and letters and thank you notes I get. She's teaching it to people, moms my age and older, that these women are like, I was so lonely, and this has given me the community I've been craving. Wow. So, yeah, back to your point of the book club, I think, doing something, an activity like that can really be it can open a door to those friendships that we want.
So we talked about conflict in the younger years. Let's jump into teenage years, because I feel like that can be such a pain point for families and teenagers, and just the drama and the bullying and the not so good side of those years.
And that sometimes they don't want to hug when you just want to give them a hug, maybe.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I know that so well. Yes. Yeah. I always, looking back, one of my number one pieces of advice for moms in the teenage years is to strengthen your adult village. And that was something that I did not do. I learned that lesson the hard way, because I had 4 little girls. I was all in mother. They were the center of my universe. I was the center of their universe. It was great when they were little. And then as they became teenagers, they started pulling away, wanting more space and starting to do more with friends. And I started getting clingy. And I hear from a lot of moms whose daughters are about 12 or 13, and they're in that same space. They're worried because they feel like they're going to lose their daughter forever. And they've always been so close, and they feel their daughter pulling away. And sometimes our instinct when our children are the center of our universe is to just get clingy and pull them back. And that makes them push us away, causes a lot of tension in the relationship. So it was really my reminder to I was like, this is why God wants us to find our identity in Christ and not our children, because he needs to be the center of my joy. So it really, is what led me to go, okay, I need to go reinvest in my faith and find my confidence and my joy, my greatest strength there. But also your adult village, because it's so hard in the teenage years. And I would often remind myself, we're supposed to love our teenagers like God loves us, to pursue their heart regardless of whether they're loving us back today. But to do that, we've got to have love in our life. And we can't depend on our child to always give us love, because they are struggling. They've got their own worries and issues going on. And they're not thinking about, how can I love my mom better today like we are? And so I think this is such a great opportunity. And it really was good. I was like, God is so gracious in letting this happen, because I might not have ever gone to reinvest in my marriage and my friendships and my adult village like I needed to after so many years of pouring into my children and putting them up on that pedestal. So what I learned is, as I was, still ready, available for my kids, and I was still loving them, but I wasn't living for their attention, I realized that it made me a healthier mom. It made me happier. If they did talk back, or, if they did do something, didn't return my hug, I wasn't so offended, because I was getting love from my husband, and I was spending time with my friends, and I could just share these stories with them. And something that makes you want to cry when you're by yourself because your child hurt your feelings, you can laugh about it when you share it with a friend, and you're getting that love from other places. So I just think it's a really good reminder for parents to just to go reinvest in your adult village. And you need love from outside sources, especially in the teenage years, because it's not always reciprocated. And, my hope with my daughters, I just always think, okay, I want them to be 40 years old and be thinking about back on the times when they were prickly as a teenager, and thinking about, man, my mom must have really loved me. I was being a pill on that day. I remember it. And yet, she still loved me.
That really hits home, because with these, where we're at with our children, how young they are, you find I find yourself in the kind of that martyr mindset of I'm giving everything I got to, make sure they're thriving and surviving. Yes. They're fed and clothed, and their butts are being wiped and all that stuff.
Yes, it's constant.
Yeah, and then it's once they hit that teenage age, it's whoa, I don't have as much of a guy friend group or your girlfriend group. You have some good girls that you hang out with,
bath friends that we took baths together when we were little. So
I'm
awesome. Sorry. Maybe I need to get better at inviting the mom that's not part of the bath group.
No. But you really identified that, and I was like, yeah, that hits home, to really kind of hone in on our adult community, so that I'm not like, hey, Tobias, come on, man. Where's the love?
Well, and it's funny, and you will
Yeah.
see it's like overnight with four. I mean, we always had our lives planned out, and then it was probably about 2 years ago when our youngest got really active. I mean, Harry and I suddenly had so many Friday nights where we had nobody at home, and it felt so weird. And
Yeah.
so I was glad that we had slowly started, reinvesting in our marriage and enjoying time together, because there comes a point where you've got all this space, and now we have a lot more free time than we ever did. And it really happened fast. And so, I think that is what, one thing I've learned watching my kids go to college is they want to see us happy, and they want to see us having joy beyond them. And I'll never forget one of my daughters telling me that she was like, yeah, I was talking to two of my friends whose parents just became empty nesters, and they were talking about how cute it is that they've seen their parents grow so much closer, and that they have all these inside jokes now. And the children were like bragging about that they loved seeing their mom and dad being happy in that way.
That's
So I
cute.
thought that's good for me to hear, and some people listening might not be married, but I'm like, have your friendship or have your job, whatever it is, your colleagues, just things that bring you joy and passion in your life. That I think that's so good for our children to see. Obviously not to prioritize above our family, but just when our family's not there, when they're doing their own thing, we have other things we can put attention to also.
Awesome.
I love that. That's like good goals. I hope our children are proud of us one day.
Oh, they will.
Well,
How
we
cute
take
they
them.
are.
Well, we do like dance lessons every now and then, and we usually make a point like they come and watch. They like, hey, bring some drawing stuff, since we homeschool and stuff.
I love it.
But every once in a while we bring them along, and they like bring their drawing pads.
I
And,
actually prefer to bring them with, because they
then watch.
know it's their time to sit and watch, but they get to see us, dancing together. And I don't know, there's something about that like the connection between us and seeing us do something that doesn't involve them, but they can still, watch us is really sweet.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Y'all are the cutest family. I love watching your videos and seeing your posts. I mean,
oh,
I'm so proud of the work you're doing. I just can't tell you how important it is. It's just to help families have those strong family, the strong family unit. I just think that can be such a buffer to any pain that these kids are going through.
and it's not easy. It's like we recognize the need for it, because like we feel the pressures of the world too, and we see the darkness, and I think the Lord warns us, we will have trouble.
Yeah.
And the devil obviously doesn't, marriage was established, family was established by the Lord, and the devil wants to try to tear that apart. So we need to be fighting and strengthening ourselves, and know that we have a battle to fight together. And even though the devil's trying to tear things apart, so we recognize that, and that's why it's so a passion project for us. And I think, like what you were saying earlier, just coming back to the truth of the word. Like there's so much information and things that are muddling, trying to just confuse us, and like, what do we do and how do we navigate all these things? But just get back to God's word and find the truth there, and be rooted in that above all things. And and then we can praise the Lord and thank you for blessings like you, Kari, and people in our lives who come around us and encourage and be like, here's what I've learned, and how we can navigate life's troubles together as a community too.
Yeah, I liked in one
definitely.
of our other episodes too, the encouragement we got. I'm trying to remember what episode it was, but the encouragement was to fight together, not with each other. And I just think that it's hard when you're in the thick and there's a lot going on, and it's hard, especially if your communication styles need some work.
Yes.
Then, yeah, but like at the end of the day, we're in this together, and we should be fighting shoulder to shoulder, not with each other, so that we can better serve our family. And, I think society really needs that more than ever with the way things have gone and where we're at now. There's just so much going against families and our young people. And then these young people who are in the broken families are then ending up, maybe not as secure or of faith, or, they're more confused about life, and they don't have that support that they really needed.
Yes.
And so, yeah, thank you so much for the encouragement, though. It's been a journey for sure, trying to figure out exactly what we want to do and, kind of stick our necks out there. It's not as easy or as simple as it may look. And I think a lot of people think like, oh, yeah, like, it just fell in your lap. I'm like, no, we worked hard. Like, we've had to do a lot to get to where we are and make the things that we want to do happen. And sometimes we're second guessing ourselves, no doubt.
Yeah.
But then
and I think just being aware of the forces against you, like Adam, one of my favorite words is Diablos. My husband's Greek, and so I love the Greek words. But one of my Greek friends, it's called Diablos, is the Greek word for devil, and it means the one who divides. And I just think, and Harry and I talk about this, it's just like he just loves to create that division in marriage, and it's so easy, especially when you are both stressed, and it's so easy to blame each other and to have those silent resentments going on in your head. And we have a friend that teaches they teach a marriage seminar every spring. And the husband was telling my husband recently, he's like, the first year that we did it, he goes, the week before we started, my wife and I got in the biggest fight we've ever gotten into. And then he said the next year, the week before they did it, they got into the biggest fight, and they realized it was like the enemy was, poking at them. So now he's like, now we anticipate it. We kind of laugh about it, like, okay, here's our fight, that we know it's coming. But I think that's such a good thing just to know in your marriage and other relationships, is just to remember, okay, we're not fighting. We really have the same goals, but it's so easy to take our frustrations out on each other, because your spouse is usually the one that, if something goes wrong in my life or I'm stressed, my husband's the easiest person to blame.
Well, I was going to just let you close out, Kari. Can you share what you're up to? You have a lot of resources on your Instagram, and you've written 5 books and 1 on the way. So share with our listeners kind of some of your books and what you're up to, and you're just such a light and encouragement. So.
Well, thank you. Again, I'm so honored to be here with you too. I just think your family is amazing. Both of you are amazing. But yes, I'm a mom of 4 girls in Birmingham, Alabama. My first 2 books were for teenage girls, really just about empowering them in faith, how to be a light in a broken world, and not be naive to the realities of this world, but also not be darkened by them, to know that God's power and strength is bigger than anything. So those first 2 books are for girls. My next 2 books were for moms. The book that moms always tell me they read 3 or 4 times and they keep in their cars, called Love Her Well, 10 Ways to Find Joy and Connection with Your Teenage Daughter. That was my favorite book to write, and it was about loving your teenage daughter, but also parenting your teenage daughter and finding that balance. And then this past January, I just released a new devotional for teenage girls, for teen girls and for college-age girls, called Yours, Not Hers, 40 Devotions to Stop Comparisons and Love Your Life. And then in September, I have a new book coming out that I haven't officially announced, but I will soon. But it's called Is Your Daughter Ready? 10 Ways to Empower Your Daughter for an Age of New Challenges. And it basically is about how do we teach our daughters to be a light in those 18 years that we have them at home. Teach them to be a force for good, see the good in this world, but also prepare them for the darkness and the dark realities they'll face.
Love it. Thank you so much. And don't you also have a book on supporting moms in their health journey too?
Yes. That was
What's that one?
Yes,
Keep
I love
going.
it. Called More Than a Mom. More Than a Mom. I forget the tagline of it, but it basically is, and this is what you realize after you've been parenting as long as I am, and when you've made sacrifices in your own health for your children's benefit, and then you face the consequences of that. It's basically about taking care of yourself and prioritizing your health so that you can be more effective for your family and to protect your health long term.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on and encouraging us, and we'll be keeping an eye out for your new book and cheering you on in the lot before you become an empty nester.
Oh, I know. Well, I appreciate this, and I will come on anytime y'all want to have a conversation.
Awesome. Sounds
you
great.
two are doing fantastic. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
God bless.
You too. Thank you.
This episode was incredible. I really needed to hear about just being reminded to stay grounded in the truth and grounded in our community. We're thankful to have you guys a part of our community. And if you're looking for more encouragement, please check out our show notes where you'll find more about Kari. You'll see what we're up to there. And yeah, we just pray that you guys are feeling blessed as well. All right, take care till next time.
Bye.